So we're going to switch up the gears a little bit and start talking about embedded analytics. I know that there's many more aspects of the new features that we can probably have a whole session about, and you'll see that in the demo. But let's kind of transition to embedded analytics. We have two dashboards, a clinical one and a usage one. We'll talk about both. So I know all of you had the opportunity to look at it, and our audience will get a chance to see that today live. But as you think through when you started using it and playing around with the clinical dashboard when you reviewed it, I want to ask, were there any surprises, Becca?
So, I mean, overall, it almost surprised us that we did really good for what we were expecting, or I guess we weren't expecting anything. So it looked really good. The one population that really stuck out to us was that our obese patients, or those that we were using the obesity calculator on, we weren't doing as well at getting them to therapeutic within that 48 hours. And so it really helped us, target like, well, what are we doing there and what can we do to improve?
What about you, Julie? Any surprises for you so far?
Yeah, so it's what I focused in on is our time to therapeutic targets. And so really we've been doing well so far, but this also offers us an opportunity for growth for our pharmacists and for our department to improve in that area. And then the other area, which is a really important measurement for our leaders here, is AKI. And so really watching that and looking for opportunities to improve or educate our staff from there.
And Will, any surprises for you?
It's really pretty.
You're surprised that it's pretty?
No, not at all. In all seriousness, it's a very succinct kind of analytics dashboard. Everything is right there front facing. You can drill down into it a bit. There's some ability to customize at the institution level as you're going through data, and it's just nicely packaged.
Great, I'm glad.
We come from the experience in previous iterations where, we would contact customer support and say, hey, can we have some use metrics? And we get a report and we'd, mess with it ourselves. And, now it's there and it's anytime you want it. So.
Yeah, and it's interactive and it's real time. So you can change whatever you need to right at your fingertips, right? So any of the, talking about the clinical metrics, have any of them resulted in changes at your institution? Becca, you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so we've been looking at obesity and we do have a population of morbidly obese patients that, it's recommended to do 2 levels. And then that's one of the things that we're trying to target, which people are appropriate for 2 levels, because not everyone is. And I don't want to add extra levels if we don't have to. But, if we can help get those people to therapeutic more quickly and have them in line with the rest of the patients, I think that's our goal. So we've started education in that area.
So it really helped you focus on that patient population and also target your education, it sounds like.
Yeah.
And Julie, sure. I know it helped you kind of take overall the dosing for your team or pharmacy to dose. What kind of metrics have changed practice or resulted in any other changes?
Well, at this point, since we actually just started taking over all vancomycin dosing just a few weeks ago, we have big plans for the analytics tool. And so really, this tool, once you see it, you'll see we are going to be able to share this information internally, share that with our pharmacy staff and our department as they're eager to see the outcomes and what we're doing with DoseMeRx. And then we have a pretty active stewardship committee here at Springfield Memorial. And so we'll provide updates to our providers and then as well as our senior leaders and other physicians throughout the hospital. So I can't say that we've done anything yet, but we have really big plans for it in the future.
That's good that you're already seeing kind of the potential of it and planning for, how you may be able to utilize it in the future, which is kind of nice to hear all different perspectives because, Rebecca, you've been utilizing it. Will, you've been utilizing it. So now how, what changes can be made and kind of to that effect, Becca, have you been able to have any discussions with your pharmacists about, the data that you've seen or what are the committees that you're presenting to?
Sure, yeah, we do have a council of pharmacists that kind of guide our clinical interventions and metrics and stuff. So we've presented to clinical council, to the antimicrobial stewardship committee, to P&T, and so we've had quite a few. And then our director presents to senior leadership, and so she has me put together a couple slides to add into her presentation of all the things we're doing. And so this has been great, and I can just, you know, slide it right over instead of creating things manually. So that's beautiful.
And have you been able to talk to your pharmacist at all about any changes you've made as a result already?
So one of the things that we did, and this is even before this dashboard came out, was some of our pharmacists had a hard time with the mentality change of AUC dosing. And so, you know, wanting to be like, well, maybe we should be 500 to 600, you know, instead of 400 to 500. And so originally we had in the calculator the predetermined AUC target was 500. And, you know, you start to see the pharmacists are all like, I want to be over 500, I want to be over 500. And so I dropped that down to 450. And so when this dashboard came out, it's kind of beautiful to see when we made that change, how our AUCs changed with that thing that we did. And so it's really nice to see that if we make another change going forward, that we'll be able to see that come out right away and see these measurements. So that was really cool that we've already been able to see things that we've done historically.
Yeah, and that's really what we were trying to accomplish, right? So you have that real-time access and data, and you can make those changes based on what you're seeing happening. So you don't have to wait. You know, I know Will talked about the metrics we would send out or the reports, those static reports. It's hard to intervene on that, you know, at the end of the quarter, so to speak. So it's nice to see that real time where you can kind of make that change and then monitor, whether it's a week later or a month later, and really see the impact of those changes. So I know, Julie, you haven't you talked about how you're planning on using it. So are you planning on presenting to any committees, or how do you anticipate utilizing this dashboard?
Yeah, so we will share it actually pretty scheduled. We do pretty much a data review just with antimicrobial utilization and days of therapy. So we'll roll that in at our antimicrobial stewardship committee and report on it quarterly, just like we do all those other pieces. So, but again, our leadership team is really you know, focused on safety and, you know, AKI. So when I go to clinical performance committee for my annual update, I'll definitely be sharing this information and comparing it to our baseline data that we've collected.
Great. And Will, has that allowed you to have any discussions with your pharmacy team or maybe hospital-wide committees?
Yeah, we've started discussions, and we definitely have plans to integrate it into our stewardship committee kind of regular review in the future. You know, being such a large organization, kind of these logistic changes take some time to filter from availability to in use, and so we're kind of in that process right now. But we definitely plan to use it to provide some summary numbers to our stewardship committees, as well as start to drill in to look at outlier populations and areas for improvement.
Great. So now looking at, kind of think through that dashboard and looking at the time to therapeutic or therapeutic target goals graph. When you take a look at that, are you meeting your target goals? Becca, we'll start with you.
Well, like I said, we just started doing NICU peds with this calculator, and our NICU peds pharmacists are really killing it. And our time to therapeutic is 100% 0 to 24 hours. And so I think that, you know, that's that's the goal, right? So I think that we can kind of try to push that in some of our other populations and our adult populations, see if we can do as good as the peds people are doing.
And what about you, Will? Have you had a chance to review the dashboard? Are you meeting your goals?
We've, I think, got a decent baseline. We look really good at the 48-hour mark. We're definitely going to have to drill into the 0 to 24 hours and try to stress that within our end users, the clinical pharmacy group. So we're just dipping a toe into that, and but we will definitely be using that going forward to give people feedback on their day-to-day performance.
Great. And so what do you think your approach will be? How are you going to be able to meet those goals? Are you targeting, is it your education, or what's kind of the plan?
So, we hope to use it to identify specific subpopulations or outliers. We've done CE on changing to AUC dosing. We've done special population CEs. We have general education planned. We on estimating renal function. These are big things, and we've done some big updates to the medical staff as well to provide them information. But that gets kind of repetitive, and it's very resource intensive to put those kind of things together. And really now we hope to be able to fine tune our interventions and fine tune our targets and fine tune our re-education now to specific subpopulations.
Great. So I've heard you all mention AKI and your subpopulation with looking at their renal function. Our patient risk indicator graph, looks at specifically that, right? It looks at the patient risk indicator graph indicates tracking of AKI and also different definitions. So Becca, you want to talk about how you've been able to utilize that?
Yeah, so historically, of course, this has all been manually, and I had a student, look through all of patients, run a report of all the patients and look up AKIs. And so we did have him do a study of trough versus AUC, and the AUC is looking better than what we were doing with trough in AKIs. And so this is just a time saver. Instead of having to wait for you to have a student and pull manual charts, I think that this is just a great way going forward to have the data at your fingertips and be able to do things with it that we weren't able to do, historically just because of time. So this has been great.
And Julie, I know it's a little bit new in the process, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so just like Becca, we used residents to comb through charts and patients to find these AKI events. But this dashboard makes it so easy, and so we've really aligned our definition of AKI with the KDIGO guidelines, which you guys cite that within your patient risk factor indicators graph. And so then we can really translate our baseline data and then share the data that we have through analytics to further, make improvements down the line and see where we can improve patient care.
And Will, I know you mentioned subpopulation, kind of looking at it. What would you find the most useful with the patient risk indicators?
We've done analyses in the past of AKI and risk in patients receiving vancomycin. If nobody on the call's ever done it, go do it. And you'll then understand how big a lift that is from a manual collection perspective. Even if you can get all the data electronically out of your EMR or third party, then cleaning it and applying definitions and weeding out trash data that's in the set. And to be able to do that kind of on the fly is a big game changer, because it's a huge lift. We've done small quality projects. We've got a paper we're trying to get in print right now from a residence project last year that looks at AKI, not from a specific methodology or outcomes perspective, but just implementing AUC guided dosing. And you can see a difference, but getting that data to prove to someone there's a difference is a huge lift.
Yes, having been the student and the resident who's had to do all these reviews and had to assign it to people, so I know what that looks like and the time that it takes to do the manual collection. So I totally relate to that one. So if we look at this part of the dashboard, the risk indicators, what would you like to see in the future iteration? Like, what would you like to be added? Becca, if you were looking at the risk indicators.
Yeah, so one of the things is, you see your rates, but then how do you fix it? So for me, I'd like to see what's the time frame to AKI. Are we having them within a couple days? Are we having them in the, at 7 days? Is it a time frame thing? Is it specific populations? So can we sort out, are they diabetics? Are they elderly? Is it our young people? Actually, one of the groups that we found we were having more AKIs in are 20 to 40-year-olds who have other comorbidities or IV drug use and stuff. So that was a group for us. So is there a ways to split it out with groups?
Yeah, that definitely sounds like something that will make it more robust and useful. So we'll definitely be talking soon, Becca, to come up with all the different ideas you have. As I mentioned earlier, we really rely on the feedback from the user. So it's awesome to hear that. Well, what about yourself? I know you talked about subpopulations. Anything specific you'd want to see added?
Yeah, I think really getting into the weeds of subpopulations would be kind of a cherry on the top for us as well. You get into data use agreements and things like that in embedded platforms and whatnot, but in theory, it shouldn't be such a Herculean lift to look at concomitant nephrotoxins, patients who got contrast material, patients who, met pressor requiring sepsis and separate them out as opposed to normal population. Patients with known history of CKD or admission serum creatinine, and being able to kind of tease these subpopulations out would be kind of a welcome innovation.
All great ideas, and I'm making notes. We'll definitely be, chatting after this, like I mentioned. So now let's move on to the usage dashboard. I know it's a little bit different, but it has still has very good information from what I can see, and I'd love to hear how you're utilizing the usage dashboard. Becca will kind of talk about how you've been using it with your team.
Sure, yeah, it's really interesting to see because you can look through users and see some people are um, dosing based on a default dose. Some people are dosing based on a custom dose. Some are doing a custom target. And so it's kind of interesting to see what different people are doing. And then you can shape your overarching education, but you can also go talk to those specific people and say, show me what you're doing, and then see, is this something that we should adopt, or is this something that we should, change? So it's been really interesting to see how people are doing things differently, and everyone came from a different background. So it's fun to get those little nuances and try to create a global approach.
Yeah, and I think as a pharmacist who's kind of utilizing it, that's probably good feedback to receive as well, right? Like, am I doing this correctly? I don't know. But there's data to show either way, if it is or not. So I think it just creates that dialogue that's very open and transparent. And, we're looking at this together. We want to reach our goals together. So, I think it's very helpful from that perspective as well. Julie, how about yourself? Any surprises from the usage dashboards? Anything, what are the plans?
Yeah, from the usage dashboard, that's really going to help us hone in and refine, our practice here. And so it'll help us ensure consistency and compliance. So just highlighting those various different doses like Becca did, making sure that we're following our protocol. So that'll be helpful, especially in these early stages. And another piece that I found really helpful as we expanded to dosing all vancomycin, this usage dashboard also breaks down like when it's when you're the busiest in terms of how frequently DoseMeRx has been launched, and you get either like an hourly breakdown or a daily breakdown. And so for us, as we're trying to manage increased workload on the weekend, that's really helpful for us to see those numbers. It's a lot easier than pulling a report and, counting up all these different various numbers. So that's also helping us as we've expanded our practice here.
And I love hearing that because, that's the big thing with big data, right? Like, if it's not usable, then there's data everywhere. So I'm really glad to hear that you're able to make those, assessments of workload between the teams, between the days of the week, and make the appropriate changes, which is, I know very, very helpful when you're, pharmacists have so many things they're juggling now. during any given shift. So it's really nice to hear. So kind of moving on to, opportunities for retraining. I know, Becca, you touched on the use of the obesity model and potentially doing re-education that's kind of targeted for that. What about you, Will? What has it, any identifying any opportunities for your staff for the usage dashboard?
I think the biggest thing for us really has been the fact that it's, real time and it's easily accessible, and we can get feedback to our end users quickly, as opposed to, here's the end of last year's or the last 2 quarters data. We have done some flash emails and clinical meeting, like top users stuff, to create some competition in a very competitive group of people anyway. So because the paradigm shift was mentioned earlier, and for some pharmacists it truly is like winning over the adoption of this newfangled thing. So anything helps.
What are you giving out prizes for that competition?
Pats on the back.
All right, so this is really great to hear how you're using it, on a day-to-day basis and real time. So overall, I just would love to hear, how much time is this saving you, Julie?
A ton. I can't even put a amount of time on it. Just to kind of paint you a picture, our baseline data that we collected, we had to do a sample. We couldn't look at all patients. And even since we've gone live, we've done a few small samples, but this captures all of your patients. So it really paints you a much better, more complete picture than doing these random audits that are so time consuming. And then the best part is then it's all wrapped up and presented in a ready to use, beautiful, dashboard. So that's also a time saver as well. So I can't put an amount, but it's very easy to use and really helps us, provide good quality care, and lets us do other things instead of manually looking at all these, a handful of charts, and now we have that complete picture because of these analytics.
Yeah, we can all use a little bit of extra time in our day, right? What about you, Becca? How much time is it saving
Oh man, I mean, I agree with Julie that we were doing, samples. And so honestly, I don't know how much time it would have taken, because we never would have had the time to do it. And so, you'd just be doing your dosing as you were doing it, because that's all you know. And now we have data to say, hey, we should target and improve. So we just have data that we never would have had, that we can now, have actual patient outcome improvements because we had the data to make changes. So it's not measurable. I agree.
Yeah. Let's see if Will can put a time frame to it. How about you, Will?
The analytics platform is weeks worth of work.
Yeah.
Just to get general summary numbers is weeks worth of work and scrubbing, and if you want any kind of specific endpoints. And this was a major research project for our PGY2 ID resident 2 years ago, just to get the data points out of it that the analytics platform can show you anytime you want it.
That's great. Again, always good to save some time, right? So let's just circle back to that initial statement I had mentioned, that good big data makes big decisions easy. So really quickly, what decision did the embedded analytics help you make? We'll start with you, Will.
We're definitely young in the process. We have plans to get the analytics data back and use it as feedback to our end users to increase adoption rates for the platform. But honestly, the biggest thing is efficiency. We are were early in discussions about putting together a data dump into a database to be analyzed in a Tableau platform to try to get some, ongoing quality metrics out of it. And now, for the most part, they all exist in the analytics platform in DoseMe, and so that's just been a huge benefit for us.
Becca, what about you?
Our goal is always to improve patient outcomes. So if you have good big data, you can make the decision where to target education, how to make changes, and how to improve outcomes. So I think that's going to help us achieve our goals.
Awesome. And Julie, I know you have plans, so.
Yeah, so we're really going to focus on the improvement of patient care. Yeah, so we want to get those, our target AUC within 48 hours, and we really want to minimize that risk for AKI. So those are going to be our targets initially.